FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, is a federal law that protects student records. Now, schools like ours receive federal funding, and that means we are legally required to keep the students' information secure. Now, FERPA ensures that grades, behavior records, and evaluations stay confidential, and giving parents and students control over their records. In this course, you will learn what to share, what not to share, and how audits and transfers work, keeping our students safe and our school in compliance. Let's get started. Now that you've had a quick introduction to FERPA, let me introduce myself. I'm Jillian O'Brien. I'm your narrator for this training. And this training is for teachers, admin, support staff, well, all district staff. And the learning goal for this training is pretty simple, to help you feel confident so you know what you can and cannot share. In Module 2, we're going to talk about what counts as an education record. And our learning goal is that staff recognize what information is covered. Well, first let's talk about records that are protected. Those are things like grades and test scores, discipline records, IEPs, evaluations, 504 plans, health, medical information kept by the school, special education services and accommodations, and any record that is personally identifiable. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about records that are not covered. So that can be something like a teacher's personal notes, but the caveat there is that it is not shared with others. So if it's your personal notes, that doesn't count as an education record. But the minute you share it with another person, then it becomes an educational record. The other thing is that law enforcement unit records. Those also don't count as education records. Now that we understand what education records are, let's talk about the rights that FERPA gives to parents, and once a student turns 18, to the students themselves. First, parents have the right to inspect and review the child's education records. Schools must provide access within 45 days of receiving a request. That means parents can't be denied access, and schools can't delay access beyond that timeline. Second, parents have the right to request corrections if they believe the record is inaccurate, misleading, or violates the child's rights. This doesn't mean the schools must change grades or judgments, but it does mean records must be fair and accurate. If the school disagrees, parents can request a formal hearing. Right number 3. Parents must generally give written consent before schools share personally identifiable information from the child's records. There are some exceptions, such as transfers, audits, or health and safety emergencies, and we'll cover that later. But the general rule is no parent consent, no disclosure. And finally, once a student turns 18 or enters a post-secondary institution, FERPA rights transfer from the parent to the student. Those young adults are called eligible students. At that point, the students decide who gets access to their records. To recap, FERPA guarantees parents, and later students, the rights to inspect records, request corrections, and control disclosures. Our job as educators is to respect the rights in every interaction with our families. So let's move on right to Module 4, which is legitimate educational interest. FERPA doesn't just protect who records are shared with outside the school. It also limits who can see them inside the school. The rule is simple. Staff may only have access to records if they have what's called a legitimate educational interest. A legitimate educational interest means that you need the information to do your job, to serve the student, or to carry out a school function. It's not a free pass to browse records because you're curious, you know the family, or you heard something in the hallway. For example, a special education teacher reviewing her student's IEP to plan for accommodations, well, that is legitimate education interest. But if a teacher decides to look at another student's IEP just because they've heard rumors about behavior, well, that's not legitimate education interest, and that's a FERPA violation. There's another piece here. FERPA does allow certain people without direct teaching roles to review those records, but generally only when it's tied to official audits, monitoring, or compliance reviews. For example, we could have state reviewers, we have lots of audits, we could have district administrators, our program support specialists, or special education directors or special education records that may have access to records during an audit to make sure that services and the IEPs are written correctly. That access is lawful under FERPA because it supports compliance with federal and state requirements. However, the same rule applies. Information seen during an audit is confidential. It can't be shared with staff who don't need to know, and it should never be discussed with parents of other students. So to summarize, staff can only access records if they need the information to do their jobs. Curiosity is never a valid reason. Auditors and administrators may also access records, but only in the context of monitoring or compliance. In every case, the guiding question is, do I need this information to serve the student or to fulfill my professional role? If the answer is no, don't open the file and don't look at it.
Okay, for this one, we're going to bring in someone else and play a little quiz game. Okay, Andre, scenario 1. A teacher emails every parent in the class to explain how one student is acting out in class. FERPA violation or not?
No violation. Parents deserve to know what's going on in the classroom.
Oh, nope, that's a FERPA violation. You can't share a student's behavior record with all the parents. Only that child's parents has the right to that information.
All right. First question. Now I'm in trouble.
All right, next one. Say you're in the student lounge and you say, one of my kids just got suspended again. FERPA violation?
Yes, that's a violation. You can't casually share discipline info unless the person needs to know for their job.
Exactly right. Even hallway talk or lounge talk, that can count as disclosure.
Redemption. Got it right this time.
Okay. All right, picture this. Your aunt works in the district office. She's curious, so she looks up one of your students in PowerSchool, even though she's not their teacher. Is that a FERPA violation?
That's definitely a violation. Just because she's staff or family doesn't mean she has a legitimate education interest.
Exactly. Access is based on need to know for the job, not curiosity.
Guess auntie's in hot water.
All right. Here's the next one. It's a tricky one. A parent asks you why their child is struggling in math, and you say, don't worry, lots of kids are behind. Even Marco is failing. Is that a FERPA violation or not?
I think that's fine. So you didn't share the record. It's just an example.
Wrong. That's still a disclosure. Sharing another student's grades or struggles with a different parent is a clear violation.
Man, FERPA is strict. I'll keep my mouth shut next time.
All right, last one. You ready?
Yes.
You post everyone's test scores on the wall so students can see how they did. FERPA violation?
Yes, that's a violation. Grades are education records and can't be displayed publicly.
Perfect. You nailed it. FERPA protects grades just like any other record.
3 out of 5. Not bad. At least I'll keep my job.
And that's the point. Knowing FERPA means we protect our students and ourselves.
So let's talk a little bit more about those everyday mistakes. FERPA violations often happen in ways staff might not expect. I think we all know not to email a whole parent group about details about a single student. But sometimes we need to discuss a student's disability or behavior, and if we do it in the hallway where others can hear, that's a problem. Posting IEP goals on classroom walls with student names is also a FERPA violation, as well as things like leaving student records open on your desk. So as we can see, even well-intentioned actions can violate FERPA if they reveal personally identifiable information. Now, FERPA extends to all students in education, but special education and 504, they're hotspots. They need a little extra care. So special education records and 504 records are particularly sensitive. Things like IEPs, 504s, evaluations, and eligibility reports, they're all considered education records and must be kept confidential. Only the parent or guardian and the student, if eligible, and staff with legitimate educational interest can see these records. So a key rule: never share details about one student with a parent of another. For example, telling a parent that little Johnny, who's not their little Johnny, is having behavior issues in class is a FERPA violation. Instead, communicate only about the child of that parent and what supports are in place for them. Handling special education and 504 records correctly protects both the student and the district. In Module 7, we're going to talk about exceptions to consent. Now, FERPA does allow exceptions to the usual requirement for parent or student consent, and these include when students transfer to another school or district when the student enrolls. Also very important is state or federal audits and also program evaluations. There's health and safety emergencies, as well as disclosure of directory information provided parents haven't opted out. So understanding these exceptions is important because staff may think all sharing requires consent, but that's not the case. FERPA clearly permits these disclosures under law. So Module 8 is FERPA and student transfers. So that means sending records to another LEA or local education agency. When a student moves to a new school or district, their educational records, including IEPs and evaluations, may be sent to the new school without parent consent. And this ensures the continuity of services and helps the new school understand the student's needs. Module 9 is FERPA and audits. So for audits and compliance checks. Audits and compliance checks are a normal and legal part of school operations. State or federal authorities and authorized district staff may review student records to ensure compliance. And these reviews do not require parent consent. Module 10 is health and safety emergencies. So we're talking about emergency disclosures. FERPA allows school staff to disclose student records without consent if necessary to protect the health and safety of the student. For example, if a student threatens to harm themselves or others, it is permissible to share relevant information with law enforcement or medical personnel. This is a very, very narrow exception and should only be used in true emergency situations. So Module 11 talks about the consequences of violations. So why following FERPA matters? Because violating FERPA can have some serious consequences. The district could lose federal funding and staff could face disciplinary action up to and including termination. Beyond the legal consequences, mishandling records breaks parent and student trust and can lead to complaints or lawsuits. Following FERPA protects the school staff and, most importantly, the students we serve. So to wrap up, FERPA is about respect, respecting students, families, and staff. By following these rules, we protect our students, our schools, and ourselves. Before sharing any information, ask, does this person need this information to do their job with this student? If the answer is no, do not share. When in doubt, consult your administrator or your special education director. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you have a great day.